Yes, welcome students to this final panel on applied social sciences to address social issues. I don't know how many of you have been here the whole day. I hope you're not just there and not listening. Do give us your ears as we share with you about psychology, communications and new media, and social work. Okay, I'll start with asking my colleagues to introduce themselves. Shall I start with Prof. Powell?
Hi, thank you, Irene. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our session. I'm Dr. 𝗔𝗽𝗶𝗲𝗍. I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of Psychology.
Maybe, Nina, can you share a bit about your area of research?
Absolutely, yeah. So
and what areas you teach as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I teach modules all the way from introductory psychology all the way up to the 4,000 level final year honors modules in moral psychology, historical controversies in psychology, developmental psychology, and so on. My research is mostly in moral decision-making, judgment and decision-making, and cognitive development. So I'm interested largely in how people think and make decisions at various ages, and specifically with respect to decisions about right and wrong.
Wow, that's interesting to me from a social point of view. How about Prof. Mitchell?
Yeah, I'm Alex Mitchell from Communications and New Media. So I teach a number of different modules in the space of interactive media design. So I teach things about sort of designing new forms of interactive media to meet users' needs. And I also talk about game design and game studies in some of my classes. Yeah, so thinking about how we interact with media and how we use that to communicate with other people.
So interesting. Yeah. So I'm Irene. Yeah. I'm my main area of research is poverty. So I teach poverty. I also teach the introduction to social work module. I teach policy. I teach welfare economics, youth work. Yeah. So like Dr. Powell, you know, we do teach a whole range of things. Yeah. So we're going to go about this session in the Q&A style. So I'll facilitate by asking the questions, and then we'll go around to answer. We've prepared 3 questions first, and then after that, we'll open up for Q&A. So as what Nisa briefed just now, if you will type your questions in the Q&A, we will try to answer as many questions as possible, but I must qualify, given that there are about 300 participants, maybe we won't be able to answer every single question. Yeah. Okay, so the first question. What are the key features of our major? And again, let me ask Nina to answer first. What are the key features of our major? Is Nina lagging? Yes?
I think so, yeah.
Maybe I shall ask, maybe Alex, you can answer first.
Yeah, maybe I can go ahead first.
And then Nina can try and figure out the connection issues.
Yeah, there's always some technology problem to deal with, right? so yeah, in communication and new media, we're a very interdisciplinary program. So we basically look at a number of different areas, generally thinking about how. So we basically a number of different areas, generally thinking about how technology affects the way that we interact with other people. So this is actually a great case of the sort of thing that we look at, right? We're using Zoom to interact with 300 potential students. So we think about the ways in which that different sort of way of interacting with people affects the way that we're communicating. We look at it from a number of different perspectives, thinking about it in terms of the way that culture affects our interaction with other people. We think about sort of designing programs, designing campaigns to communicate with the public. And we also think about how we can design new interactive systems. So sort of the range of ways in which people communicate and how technology affects that.
Yep. And I definitely work with colleagues in your Department of Communications, because in social work, when we design programs, we need to communicate them out well. Yeah. So let's try Nina again. Let's try Nina again.
Okay, I'll try again. Sometimes I find that the virtual background just grinds my Zoom connection to a halt. I'm not sure why. So hopefully this works out better. I'll just say a little bit about the major. You know, we are essentially interested as psychologists in mind and behavior. So, you know, it's a very expansive topic. And of course, when you think of psychology, you probably tend to think about clinical psychology, which is the maybe more applied context of working with patients who might have certain mental disorders, or even helping individuals flourish in their mental well-being. But there's a lot of there are many other areas of psychology beyond clinical as well. We have the study of development and the mind, the brain, the study of behavior in groups, and the study of you know, anything that has to do with how humans interact with each other, and how that affects thinking and feeling as well.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. When you started by saying that people tend to think of psychology in the applied context, the clinical context, that's social work. So we do have students who come in thinking, hey, maybe psychology, then they switch to social work, or they do both. Yeah. So social work is the only professional degree in the college. By this, I mean that without this degree, you cannot practice as a social worker. Much like how you need a law degree to practice as a lawyer, or medical degree to practice as a doctor. That's our modules tend to be very skills-based. We teach students skills in casework, in group work, in community work, and even in policy work. We also have a compulsory internship where students work in 2 blocks of 400 hours each in actual client settings. So you actually do client work, but under supervision by an experienced social worker. And this internship builds to the accreditation as a social worker. One more feature I will mention is, as a discipline, social work is an applied social science. Yeah, as I mentioned in the beginning. For example, my area of work, poverty, and also intersecting with youth crime. So we apply economics, right? Poverty tends to drive people towards money-related offenses because opportunity cost is low when your income is so low, and so splashing blood on someone's door as a loan shark runner or engaging in fraud, becomes more attractive, and you take the risk. Of course, we have to apply psychology. There are young people with predispositions to crime, maybe oppositional disorders or some impatient traits, but that's not the end. It's not just psychology, right? There's environment matters as well, and so we apply sociology as well. What kind of environments do young people grow up in, right? Are very, very key as well. We can't just say because a young person has anger management and then this person will become a criminal. So everything comes together, and we look at it as a person-environment perspective. Anything else to add on this key features of your majors, Alex and Nina?
I think I just want to briefly mention that we also have a compulsory internship program as part of our program. So we also, CNM is not doesn't require accreditation the way that social work does, but we do very much focus on getting students ready for the workforce. So usually in their 3rd year, it's actually required in 3rd year, the students will all go out and do a 6-month internship, which we find is a very useful way to get them ready for the workforce. Yeah. So we're very, very much applied.
Thanks. Anything else to add, Nina?
I would just add that, like Irene, similar to you, that our major is a very sort of broad-based major in the sense that to carry on as a psychologist specifically, you would need to go to graduate school in the same way that you would go to medical school to be a doctor and law school to be a lawyer. So it is a degree that is at the undergraduate level, very sort of a very general sort of degree, and to practice as a psychologist or to use that title, whether it's in clinical settings or in academia, you have to go on to graduate school.
And that actually is a good point for us to go into our second question, which is what career prospects are there for graduates from your major, right? So, Nina, you mentioned that they will need to go to graduate school to practice clinically or in academic. So for graduates from the undergraduate psychology program, what kind of career prospects do they have?
So yeah, for undergraduates who do not go on to graduate school, but have a major degree in psychology, an undergraduate degree, in Singapore specifically, you can work as an associate psychologist, which is essentially working with a team of psychologists, doing sort of support work for perhaps a clinic, support work in any kind of mental health facility, and even in the government sector. So many of our graduates go on to work for the MOH, for MOE. So, public sector work is often really common if you do not want to go beyond the undergraduate degree. If you do a graduate degree in psychology, then you can become a practicing psychologist rather than an associate psychologist. And you can work with patients in private practice or again in the public sector, working for government agencies. But just to say one more little thing about the prospects for an undergraduate degree, it's such a broad-based degree that you can find that many companies and corporations, even private sector and the public sector, are interested in psychology undergraduates for the purpose of data science, for the purpose of user research, user experience research. Anything that involves behavioral science will attract psychology undergraduates.
Yeah, and I think I would add, I think that's good that you emphasize the broad-based training in our faculty, and I think that's what we known for in our faculty and now the college, right? That we train our students in the ability to be adaptable for employment in various different sectors, the critical thinking, the kinds of things that you mentioned as well. Okay, over to Alex.
Yeah, actually, I can follow on from some of what Nina was saying. I mean, there's some overlaps. I mean, actually, it's very nice that there's sort of connections between our three different programs because I mean, she mentioned user research, user experience. We also have, quite a lot of my students are interested in going into user experience design. And we do also sort of touch on some of the issues in terms of how people interact with each other and in our training. So that's one of the areas that, especially because I teach in the interactive media part of the department, a lot of students go on to work as user researchers, user experience designers. But we also have people who are perhaps more sort of interested in the corporate comms, public relations aspects of what we teach. So we have people who go into communications agencies, so running campaigns, designing and running campaigns, perhaps, for example, to encourage people to get vaccinated now that vaccines are becoming available. So get communicating messages to the public. So that might be in the private sector, but also might be in the public sector. So quite a lot of our students go and work in government agencies, doing communications, doing research even, to prepare white papers for ministers and things like that. So there's quite a range of ways in which people can sort of apply the skills that they learn. And increasingly, now that we have the cultural studies part of the department as well, we also have people working perhaps in museums, in arts management, sort of the range of sort of areas in which cultural studies touches on as well. So yeah, I think it's a very sort of flexible program to be studying, and a lot of job prospects out there.
That's right, yeah. So for social work, yeah, as both of you shared, we do have graduates who go into that kind of work, like they join government ministries, writing papers and proposing policies. For social work graduates, predominantly they go into the Ministry of Social and Family Development. But of course, besides these areas, because social is a profession, so most of our graduates will go in and become social workers. And there's such a dire shortage of social workers that all our graduates have no problems finding jobs. Yeah, so typical settings that social workers work in are in family services centers, family service centers, in hospitals as medical social workers, in youth organizations doing preventive or remedial youth work, also in family violence units, working with perpetrators as well as victims, just to give some examples. So I guess maybe something that's more relatable to the participants in this panel is that now with COVID-19 and all of us doing this kind of distanced engagement, the social workers are really in the front line, helping people who have fallen into hard times during this period. Right? We hear of people losing jobs, people whose wages are cut, families where the family violence has increased. So social workers are dealing with all this. So it's very meaningful work. All right, so I think we touched a bit on this when we talked about the internship, but the third question we thought we will address is what hands-on learning do students in our major engage in? Maybe I'll start with Alex first.
Sure, yeah. I would say that sort of our general approach across the major is to sort of try to have a blending of theory and practice. So there is a very sort of hands-on component to almost everything. Of course, there are some classes you would take that are just sort of the theories of communication and new media, but in general, we try and apply. So some of the things I mentioned already in terms of sort of the job areas, I think are directly related to what we do in class. So we have classes where people are designing campaigns. So learning some of the theories behind how you communicate a message to the public, but then not just learning that, but also doing that. So you go through and work sometimes with an external client to do a project that's based on a particular message that the client wants to get across. We also do a lot of work sort of in the areas that I teach in terms of perhaps designing a new website or designing games, and not just sort of thinking about the theories behind that, but applying those theories. So the overall sort of idea is that you think about the theories and then you learn them by applying them. And it's not just sort of textbook learning, it's textbook learning complemented with application of that learning, and then sort of understanding through doing why those theories are the way they are. So it's very much sort of intertwining theory and practice. And I think a lot of that sort of is put in place in the internship program, that when you go out and do your internship, you realize, oh yeah, these things I did in the class, yeah, hopefully they actually are things that you're using on the job. And then that's the way of sort of making real the learning that you're doing in the classroom.
Great, yeah. So they actually have to do projects even for the classroom learning.
That's right, yeah. And I would say we're also taking a very interdisciplinary approach. So a lot of our classes, we have students from other majors within arts and social science, or even across a College of Humanities and Sciences. And we do have, for example, in my classes, I get a lot of School of Computing students as well. So we sort of emulate the sort of interdisciplinary environment you'd have when you go out and actually join the workforce. So preparing you for working with people who don't have quite the same background as you, and to understand how to talk to people who've got different backgrounds.
Yeah, important. Thanks. Nina, what about psychology?
Yeah, so for psychology, we don't have a formal internship program for students, but we do have many students who source their own internships in the community, even with our own clinic that's on campus. So we have the CHPC, which is our clinic that serves the whole community, but is run by our department, or the clinical faculty in our department. So we have opportunities for volunteering to do research in these contexts, but also there are modules where you can get research experience, independent study, independent research projects. You can work in faculty members' labs. Essentially, all of us in the faculty in the department have ongoing research projects with the help of our students and postdocs and all sorts of different kinds of support structure. So we have undergraduates who work in our labs, and that can be voluntary, it can be for course credit, module credit, or it can be in the context of a thesis project, an undergraduate honors thesis project. And then the internships in psychology tend to be sourced by students outside of our department.
Right, thanks. Yeah. So in social work, I think it is those things that you've mentioned. Our students also get involved in our research projects, either on their own or through their theses and all that. And then internship is a very structured program. Our department has a field team to structure this because it's part of our professional education. Yeah, and like what Alex mentioned, really the internship is the highlight, because then the students say, oh, we've been learning all these theories, and then when we go there and actually see the clients, then they, oh, that's what it means, that's how it is applied. Yeah, and besides that, all our modules are have hands-on elements. We will invite social workers from the field to come and speak. We bring them on site visits. We do projects where they have to present to the agencies. We do community needs assessment with the community development councils. And I think one specific example, which I just found out from one colleague, she teaches the end of life care module. And she brought the students to an actual funeral home for class there and for discussion there. So it's really live in action kind of learning. Yeah. Okay, so I think there have been many questions in the chat, in the Q&A. And I feel like we have to address those questions about psychology because those came right from the beginning, Nina, about can they get into the program? What's the expectations? So over to you.
Yeah, so for psychology, if you're accepted into the college, you can take the introductory psychology module to start with, obviously partly to see if you really have a true interest in psychology. It's a broad exposure module, so you'll learn about all of the different subfields and areas in psychology, all the different kinds of research that we do. And I teach this module to a very large cohort. But the current system in place in our department is that to go on to then declare a major in psychology, you do need to have a B- grade in that module or better. And then you will go on from there to take statistics and research methods modules, and you also need to meet the GATE requirement. So essentially, if you're accepted into the college, you can choose to declare your major in psychology, and then you do need to pass this GATE requirement to declare the major, which is just this B- grade or higher.
Right, yeah. I think a related question there is also about how do you then declare double majors. I think there was one specific question about double major in psychology and social work, but I think this can be general. Yeah. So I think, yeah, maybe go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say that we do have several students who decide to double major social work and psychology, or sociology and psychology, even philosophy and psychology. Those are fairly common double majors. The double degree program, where you take a degree in, let's say, life sciences or maybe law faculty, and psychology is also an option. Essentially, the double degree is a bit more rigorous than just a double major, because double major, you're within the same faculty, same college. Yeah, so these are options for students who want to maybe have a bit more padding maybe to their experience and their knowledge base when going out into the workforce or in graduate school.
Actually, maybe our dean's office colleagues may better answer this question about how do you declare double major. But to my knowledge, I think you declare your first major and then you go and meet the requirements. And as long as you meet the requirements for your second major, then you can declare it as the second major. So you just have to check and really plan your modules carefully along the way. And the good thing now with the college is that you can really major, minor, double major in anything in the college. Doesn't have to be just our faculty.
Science as well, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Across the science as well, yeah. I think there's a question then about what it takes, how do you face this? I think how do you face this? Am I breaking up?
I think you're okay now.
You're okay now. Yeah, just now it's kind of something went wretched. Yeah. Yeah. I think there are questions about what kind of qualities are required to be major in social work, psychology, or CNM. Yeah. Maybe Alex, you can start.
What kind of qualities? I guess, yeah. What sort of person should be thinking about this? I think for communications and new media, I mean, we have quite a wide range of types of students, but I think the main thing is that you should be interested in people and how people interact, right? Because that's sort of what communication is all about, and thinking about learning the theories that underlie that. So like for my what I teach, a lot of it involves going out and talking to people, understanding what their needs are, if you're designing an interactive media system, for example. And then as you interview people and understand what their needs are, then be analytical about that and then translate that into design requirements. And then be able to sort of think analytically, but also be open to talking to people, understanding people, their needs, and then being able to translate that into something. And then also be willing to, I guess, accept that what you're thinking about and what your possible solutions are may not actually work the first time. So a lot of what we do is using sort of a design thinking approach where you take prototypes and you put them back in front of people and see how they respond to it. So I guess sort of what underlies that in interactive media design, but I think also in cultural studies and communication management in media studies, it's all about sort of being open to working closely with people, understanding people, and then applying that to your design work or to your campaigns that you're thinking about. So being able to sort of think analytically, but also be very sort of comfortable working with people, which probably I'm guessing that sort of applies to psychology and social work as well. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, on top of my head, I was thinking you have to be interested in people to be able to work with people in social work, right?
Yes.
I think the two things I can think of in addition to being interested in people for social work pages is there should be a curiosity about social issues and how they impact lives. Yeah. If you're not curious about that, then why would you want to be in that space? Yeah. And the second thing is having some sense of social justice. Yeah. Because if you need to carry this through and keep helping and keep working with vulnerable populations, you have to have that sense that you want to do better for them, right? Help them level up, help them function in a society that has expectations that might be beyond them at the moment. What about Nina?
Yeah, so for psychology, I think you definitely similar kind of thing is you have to be interested in people, you have to be interested in behavior, and more maybe at a micro level than say sociology, for example. We're dealing more with sort of smaller groups and individuals. And I would say that one of the things students are often very surprised by when they start the psychology degree is how biological it is. So we do look at the brain, we look at internal structures of the mind like memory, language, and so essentially it's not just about sort of social relations and different sorts of group interactions, but also the biological underpinnings for those aspects of human experience.
Thanks. I think we have to address another set of questions, which is the difference between NTU and NUS for CNM as well as psychology. So go ahead.
Maybe I can try that one first. So this is, I mean, if I didn't get this question, something would be wrong. Every open house, whether it's online or face-to-face. So yeah, I mean, there's the 𝗦𝗰𝗶𝗲𝗀𝗀 School of Communication at NTU, which is, I mean, I think the first thing to think about is that NTU, their School of Communication is a school, right? So it's at a certain level, and basically you come into NTU as a communication student. So I mean, there's advantages and disadvantages to that. I think the advantage is that if you know you want to do communication from the start, you can declare that right from the start. And they're a big school with a lot of connections with industry, and that's something that, I mean, I'm not going to put down. I mean, NTU has strengths there, but I think there's also strengths in coming into College of Humanities and Sciences, and then having a more sort of broad-based interdisciplinary foundation. And then when you are sure that you want to do communications and new media, declaring that major. Right. So I think that's actually sort of the general strength of NUS and CHS, that you have a much more broad-based education where you can come in and then think about what you want to do, because coming straight out of A-levels or wherever you are when you're applying to NUS, you may not know exactly what you want to do. So you have that sort of strength of the college system, and you also have the strength of being able to, for example, take maybe a minor or a major in psychology and social work and other areas to complement what you're doing in communications and new media. So I think that's really the main way of thinking of the differences, that NTU, 𝗦𝗰𝗶𝗲𝗀𝗀, it's a big school, but you need to go straight into that school from the start, and you don't have the interdisciplinarity that you would get at NUS. CNM, it's a little bit smaller, a bit more focused, and yet also gives you that sort of ability to draw upon all the other majors within humanities, social science, and science now with CHS. So that's sort of the main difference. I think the other difference is that we are communications and new media. So we've got much more of a new media focus. I think we NTU, the strength really is traditional media. So they do broadcast, they do newspaper writing, they have sort of a pipeline into Straits Times, for example. We also have a lot of graduates there, but we're much more focused on perhaps social media, the things that are sort of up and coming and changing. Not that they don't do that, but I think that's really our focus, that we're thinking about taking advantage of things like this, right? Being online, being able to connect to so many different people without having to physically go and see them. So I think that's something that we're really tapped into. So yeah, I mean, the NTU is also very good, but I think differences. So think about what you're ready for and which one you prefer.
And for psychology?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very similar to what Alex said about the sort of general interdisciplinary, broad-based focus that you get here in our faculty and in our college. I think I'll just say this, rather than speak directly to what differs between NTU and NUS psychology, I'll just say that different departments in any institution have different faculty, are made up of different faculty with different research interests. And so what you'll see, the biggest differences between any psychology department in any university is the concentration of the areas of interest of the faculty within there. And that obviously influences the kinds of modules that we propose and offer. So I'll tell you that at NUS, in NUS psychology, we have a lot of interest in the brain. A lot of interest in neuroscience. We have researchers in our department doing really cool things with getting monkeys to drive robot cars and all sorts of neat things to do with the brain. So there's a very heavy biological focus in our department. And then other than that, we have a huge language department, as in our department looks a lot at bilingualism, multilingualism as a psychological process, and understanding sort of the origin of language and the interaction between language and other kinds of functions of the mind. And then our clinical department is very strong as well. Having our own clinic on campus helps a lot. So if you're interested in things like trauma, eating disorders, certain sort of areas of mental health, we definitely have a strong focus there.
Great. I think I'd like to add a bit on this conversation as well. I agree that I have seen students who come into the social major, as well as when I teach the introduction module, and I have students that are the whole range. They might come in like totally focused, thinking they want to do a certain major. Then as they visit the different majors, then they start to see, hey, actually there are more options, yeah, and then they switch. In social work, there are a lot of scholarships offered to students even before they come in, yeah, and some of them actually, they get, for example, the medical social work scholarship, and then as they get exposed to other fields in social work, they say, wow, actually, you know, I took the medical scholarship, but actually there are other things that are very interesting for me as well. Yeah, so it's good in that sense that we have that range for young people at that age, I think, to make some decisions. Yeah, great. I see another set of questions, which is on assessments in our different majors. How are students assessed?
Yeah, I guess that's an important question. I mean, people, even though we sort of move beyond grades being the only thing, like grades are there, you've got to be assessed in some way, right? So yep. I guess, I mean, for CNM, I can start. It depends on the class, on the module you're taking. And I think we do have some classes that are still exam-based, but we also have more project-based modules. I also saw some questions about, like, is there a lot of writing, for example? So we do have classes where there'll be like a very large final essay, for example. There are more project-based classes, like a lot of the classes I teach, like game design, UX design, there isn't an exam. So instead you'll work in groups and there'll be a project. So you may be, for example, this semester I'm teaching game studies, where we think about what makes a game, but we do it by making games. So the students will work in a team of 3 or 4, and they'll make a computer game or a non-computer game, and they will be assessed partly on the process. So I'll be sort of every week I'll be seeing, are they doing things the way that I've taught them to. And then at the end, they will present their final project, and then they'll be assessed on the presentation, but also on the content they created. But together with that, they'll usually, at least in my classes, they'll write a shorter essay. So there'll be a reflective component where they sort of connect what they just did to the theory that we've been discussing. So there'll definitely be some writing, there'll be some thinking, and the thinking sort of being applied to the theories and the practice that you're doing. But we do also have some classes that are exam-based, where there may be MCQ, there may be short essay questions that you'll do in an exam, sort of in a timed, controlled setting.
Right.
So I think the main point is there's a range. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Maybe I'll go next because I think the social assessments are very similar to what Alex has described about CNM. We do have there's some modules that are exam-based, but a lot of modules are with reflection papers so that they can reflect on experience of having, say, conducted group work at a senior activity center. Then they have to do the projects and then present them, and they'll be graded for that. So there's a range, yes. Nina?
Yeah, there's quite a range in psychology as well. We have some, the introductory large modules at the start of the degree, introductory psychology, and then also your introductory core modules, which are essentially just the modules that go a little bit deeper into each of the different areas of psychology. And those are usually exam-based or more frequent low stakes assessments like frequent quizzes and some projects, group work. As you get towards the end of the degree, towards the upper level honors modules or final year seminar modules, you have much smaller class sizes. And you also then have more opportunities for essay writing, project proposals, group work projects, I'm thinking if there's anything else I'm missing, but essentially, yeah, quite a bit of writing. It is a writing focused degree in the sense that we write research papers. And so that's something you'll definitely have a lot of exposure to. And then you have a little bit of statistics in the psychology undergraduate degree, which means you do have to do a bit of maths, and you will have some maths assessments.
Great, yeah. I think I'll go back to Alex. There's one particular question which might be related to this thing about assessments. Do you have to be outgoing to be a CNM major? Because you talk so much about all the communications projects and.
Oh, it's a really difficult question. I mean, do you have to be outgoing? I think you need to, I mean, similar to social work, I think you have to have some interest in people. But there are different ways in which you can think about sort of applying what we're learning in CNM, right? So some people may be more interested in doing research, not necessarily directly interacting with people, but thinking about the theoretical ideas behind communications. Maybe, for example, some of the work that some of my graduate students do is sort of analyzing the structure of games. So thinking about how they fit together, how the sort of the mechanics of a game work, which is in a way a little bit more sort of like doing a literary analysis of a game. So it is, I wouldn't say that if you're very sort of introverted, it means you cannot study communications and new media. But I do think there is sort of an underlying idea that, I mean, communication is about, I mean, people communicate with people, right? So you do have to think about that, but it doesn't mean that you're not able to study and move into the space. I mean, I think also, I mean, I actually used to be very introverted when I was an undergrad, and now I never expected I would be a lecturer, and I sort of learned to do that. So I think, I mean, there's also, if you find something very interesting, and you connect to it, you will grow into it, and you will learn to, I mean, if you love it, you will learn to sort of expand yourself to fit what's needed.
Yeah, I agree with that. Actually, the thought that came to my mind when I saw that question was the discipline is about people communicating with people, but if you're the ones that's working at that behind the scenes, you don't have to be upfront there all the time doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, you can be observing people, understanding them.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That observation requires someone to just sit back and watch and not be the one talking.
Sometimes don't talk. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, that's right. Would any of you like to address any specific questions that you see?
Yeah, I'm scrolling through the questions now.
That's right, because I've been trying to answer questions that have the, like the comment to us. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Maybe as you scroll through, I saw two for social work, which I will address, and then I'll hand the time to you. Okay, so one person asked about whether you can practice straight away after you get your degree. I would say yes, because it's a requirement to have this degree, then you practice. But then depending on the setting might require that you take more training, right? And the agency that hires you will send you for that required training. For example, if you do child protection work in the Ministry of Social and Family Development or probation work in the ministry, they will have to send you for additional training before they can let you be a probation officer or child protection officer. Yeah. Another question I have is someone who asks, it seems like it's very mentally exhausting to be a social worker. Any insights on how do you cope with that? So self-care is very important. And so we do talk to students about the sense of self, the ethics behind doing that kind of work, because we are constantly with people at their most at-risk moments, right? So we always have to discuss the ethical dimension and the person as in the social worker dimension. And that's why we emphasize also supervisors with experience who will take on the students, and later on, even in the field, there are supervision structures in place for social workers. Hey, Nina, yep.
Yeah, I saw a couple I thought I would take. One is a sort of specific question just about a cap for the number of students who can declare psychology. So there isn't a cap per se. If you're admitted into the college and then you decide that you want to major in psychology, you just have to meet that minimum requirement of the B- grade or higher in the introductory course, and then the research methods and statistics course. Otherwise, if you don't make that requirement, then you aren't able to declare psychology as a major. But if you do make that requirement, then there is no cap. There's no quota, essentially, in terms of a number. And then this one I thought I would answer is kind of a little bit interesting in terms of what's something that I wish someone had told me when I went into studying psychology. I think just two things briefly on this. One is that psychology is very broad. There's a lot of different areas of psychology. So, you know, like I said, the one often people think of immediately is clinical, but that's just one area. So there's a lot of other aspects of psychology, which means that doing an undergraduate degree in psychology is an opportunity to really have an interdisciplinary experience. You're going to have exposure to biological topics. You're going to have exposure to social topics that almost intersect more with social work and sociology. You're going to have exposure to all sorts of different questions, philosophical questions. What does it mean to be a human being, to experience the world? And so it's really broad. And that is exciting, but can also be daunting. So it's a good thing to know going in, that it's exciting that you're going to have a lot of interdisciplinary exposure and opportunity for learning about many different topics. It's a little bit daunting because often our students feel a little bit as though they're not sure which area to navigate towards. And the point is to take the pressure off, because an undergraduate psychology degree is not a specialization. Okay, so you basically get to soak it all up, and you do not have to choose a sort of path in the undergraduate degree. When you graduate with this undergraduate degree, you can basically do almost any job that involves human interaction and human questions of human experience. So it's really broad-based. And if you end up wanting to be specifically a certain type of psychologist, whether it's a research psychologist or a practicing psychologist, you can go on to graduate school to do that.
Thanks, Nina. Alex?
Yeah, I think actually there's a couple of questions that maybe follow quite nicely from what Nina was just saying. So I think one was about what's the curriculum like in CNM, in communications and new media. So what sort of program workload, special programs. So I think one thing I wanted to mention is that, I mean, communications and new media is also a very broad program. We don't actually have specialization of any sort, even though I've mentioned areas like interactive media, media studies, communication management. You don't have to declare those in any way. So it's a very open program. We only have a few core modules that everyone must take. And then you can choose whether you want to take some interactive media design classes, some media studies, some communication management, some cultural studies, and mix them based on what you're interested in. So I think that's one of our strengths, that and it also relates to the other question that was about sort of the job prospects, and particularly so that, they were talking about interactive media design. But I think the thing to think about if you want to do CNM is that you can actually sort of mix and match the modules that you want to take, just keeping in mind that some of them have prerequisites. But other than that, you may want to take maybe a video production module, but then also take a module on gender, race, and representation, for example, from cultural studies, or you might want to take a module that looks at crisis communication, and sort of see the mixture of classes that are actually interesting to what you want to do. And then all of those can sort of put you in a good position to go out and work in a range of different jobs. Right? So even though I may tend to mention interactive media design because that's what I teach, but I think a lot of our students do go into sort of more general positions where they're dealing with the public. They're thinking about designing campaigns. They're thinking about dealing with sort of things that are happening on the fly, which require the company they work with or the government agency they work with to deal with the public, and then to understand how to do that best, making use of the different media that's available to them. And so I think what I want to sort of stress to the people is that it's a very diverse program, and the core set of classes that sort of teach you the foundations of communication theory and methods, there's only 2 or 3 of those. It's quite a focused module. It's a very focused, small number of core modules, and then it's a very diverse program.
Yeah, I think that also addresses a few questions that we have that's about, can you major in this and minor in that? Can you double? I think the short answer is yes.
Yes.
But it has to do with planning, how you plan out your modules so that you meet all the requirements for the majors, the minors, the double majors. Yeah, I think one thing that I was just going to say quickly, one thing to realize is that it may feel overwhelming when you first come into university, that everything is sort of up to you to figure out and what classes to take. But all the departments have admin staff that are very good, and also they have faculty who are designated to be sort of undergraduate counselors, and it's good to talk to them from the start to sort of think about, how do I make sure that I cover all the CHS requirements, all the interdisciplinary modules, and also sort of think about how you would find space to take the majors and maybe the minor that you want to take. I mean, the flexibility is there, but you also need to think ahead and plan carefully what you want to do. And you should make use of people like us and other people in the departments and in the faculty to get the advice, because we sort of know the system from the inside, so we can help you. Yeah, and I think upper year students are very key too. Yeah, seniors are definitely. And oftentimes if students come to me asking me about strange combinations that they want to do, then I'm like, I think I know one student who has done that. They probably have some tricks in how they plan that out. Talk to this person, and while I give the advice. I think Nina wanted to add something.
No, I was just, I had nothing specific to add though.
Okay, so I think seniors and also the student societies in each of the departments, I mean, those are great resources because they're doing the same thing as you, but they're a couple of years ahead of you. So they know the tricks, like Irene said. Yeah, that's right. I wonder whether I can get any of our dean's office colleagues to help us answer several questions about how to declare major. It feels like students who are right now applying are thinking they need to declare now, or at which point do they declare? And I don't want to give them the wrong answer. Is anyone able to? Because it seems like there are a few questions on that. Yes, Amy.
Hi, okay. I think the best would be for the students to actually write in to ask CHS, and then our colleagues will be able to give them better advice.
Okay, yeah.
I think there'll be some contact information at the end of the session, right?
Yes, correct.
That's right. Well, generally, for this college, we admit into the college, then we decide on the major. I think that's the process, right?
Yes. So you apply into CHS first. Yeah.
Yep, that's right. And thanks, Amy. Yeah. So I think I also want to add to what Alex was talking about, how your students would then take different kinds of modules in the faculty and now in the college as well, right? All the options in order to enhance that learning. Yeah. So for example, in social work, because we work with populations in Singapore from the different ethnic origins, our Chinese students will go and take Malay language, And our student society organized like dialect workshops, and then the students, right, who don't have those dialect background, they will learn together. We have students who will take CNM modules because those will help them in terms of communications about the program. And we've mentioned about how we have a lot of double majors in social work and psychology. Yeah, so I really found that students are so good in how they plan and really enhance their learning.
Yeah, actually, I find that it's it's very nice when I get a good mixture of students in my classes, right? So even just beyond people who are doing double majors, sometimes I'll have people from engineering, from computer science, even from theater studies, from all over the university. I also get some students from industrial design, from SDE, for example, who may be just taking the class because it's interesting, and just bringing those different perspectives to the class really enriches the overall experience. So I mean, that's one of the strengths, I think, of CHS, but also NUS, that you can have these students coming in to do their electives and really sort of bringing a different perspective that even I maybe wouldn't have thought of, and enriching the class experience.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, like one example in social I can think of, we have an interprofessional education with the medical school, nursing, and pharmacy. The students will do projects together through that module. My colleague teaching disability has partnered with engineering in order to come up with designs for persons with disability. So there's lots of these kinds of collaborations going on. Yeah, and with the college, I think there'll be more.
And I think just one other thing to mention for students who are coming in to think about is that there's also minors to consider, right? That you can take a minor together with the major, and some of those actually cut across different faculties. So in CNM, we have a joint minor with computer science and interactive media development. So it allows you to double count some of your modules to one of those two majors, and then take the minor. And I think that's a great way of going even beyond CHS to take something that sort of cuts across to, in this case, computer science. So it's good to sort of see what are all those possibilities as you start to think about applying, and then consider what sort of, how can you sort of best make use of the system to get something that I mean, an education that suits what you're interested in.
Great, thanks. I think we're supposed to end at 5:50 and we're 1 minute over time. Maybe any last words that you'd like to share with the students?
I think I just wanted to say for psychology, I've been scrolling through the different questions, and just to sort of end on this note, what kind of person should do psychology, or what makes psychology a great major and a career path. If you're interested and fascinated and can't sleep at night because you're puzzled by why people do what they do, why people think the way they think, and you really have this sort of intrinsic interest in human experience, I highly recommend psychology to you. But I also recommend, before you jump into a major, you go to a local bookstore or your Goodreads on your Kindle, and you look at some of the top psychology books. You can even email professors like myself and ask for recommendations on readings. Look up psychology podcasts. Look at Psychology Today blogs that are out there to get a better sense for what kinds of things there are. And Singapore has many opportunities, and internationally there are many opportunities to pursue a career in psychology, because there are so many things you can do with this degree.
Thanks. And you want to take action, then consider social work. Action can be at individual level or at the general level, more general level of public advocacy or community work. Yeah. But I think for the college as a whole, come in, explore, and then make your decision after you have explored. Yeah. Alex?
I think, trying to think back how I decided where to go when I was coming out of secondary school, high school. I think just think about what you really want to do. I mean, don't worry. I mean, of course, you'll be thinking about jobs and careers and everything, but also think about what really connects with you, what's going to keep you interested. Because whatever you do, as long as you do something that you really enjoy, you'll do it well. So just use this chance to think about, okay, which one really sparks my interest, and then try and find a path that can take you in that direction. That's most important.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, profs, for joining us this afternoon. This is the last session. for the day. I hope all the students logged in found it beneficial and fruitful. For those of you who missed some of the sessions because there were overlaps and between the humanities, sciences, there was a lot going on today. Take note that the recordings are available on Facebook, so you can always go back and revisit any of the talks. The website is available. There are plenty of FAQs. You can reach out to us by phone, by email, should you have any questions. So stay tuned and keep in touch and send us your comments if you have any. Okay, so thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you in the next run.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.